I've been trying to understand a direct experience within the Advaita framework, which is, as you know, somewhat new to me. So, in this present moment of wakefulness, within the recognition of awareness, awareness is recognizing itself, and simultaneously one sees the world of objects. You had explained that, in order for consciousness to experience a finite world, it had to forget its infiniteness and see the finite world through the agency of a seemingly finite person. But it does seem that one can retain a recognition of awareness while...
Yes. It's called lucid waking.
That's just what I was going to ask you, because you mentioned that term.
Yeah, lucid waking. There's this beautiful passage in the Bhagavad Gita. It says, what is sleep for awareness is waking for the finite mind. And what is sleep for the finite mind is waking for awareness. What is waking for awareness, that is, awareness is awakeness to itself, its knowledge of itself, is, from the point of view of the finite mind, unknowable, dark, sleep. The finite mind knows nothing of it. As consciousness recognizes itself, the finite mind falls asleep. When the finite mind wakes up and seems to know objects, consciousness's knowledge of itself seems to disappear or fall asleep. And my dream analogy is an expansion of this beautiful passage in the Bhagavad Gita. When our mind falls asleep, it wakes up as the person on the streets of Paris in the dreamed world. So our mind has to fall asleep for the character in the dreamed world to wake up. But the moment the character in the dream world falls asleep, the person in Burlingame wakes up in his bed. But that's the normal state. However, it is also possible for the finite, for someone in Burlingame to fall asleep, dream that they are in the streets of Paris, and then whilst the dream is still going on, to wake up to the fact that they are asleep in Burlingame dreaming the world. That's called lucid dreaming. So what we are aiming at here is exactly the same thing in the waking state, lucid waking. Yeah. In which case this phrase from the Bhagavad Gita would no longer apply. Right. When instead of the consciousness having to overlook itself in order for the finite mind to wake up, consciousness would first fall asleep. Consciousness would first fall asleep as the finite mind wakes up, and then consciousness would wake up to itself and recognize that it is dreaming this world and viewing this world through the agency of the finite mind, but it would still know itself as infinite consciousness. That would be lucid waking. That's what we're aiming at here.
And when that happens to some degree, then the finite world changes. It loses its solidity.
Yes, as the Sufis say, it shines with God's presence. It's a religious way of saying, or a less religious way of saying it would be, it shines with the light of pure knowing. Because after all there is to our experience of the world is knowing. I mean, from a materialistic point of view, do we not feel that, look outside now at those trees, are they not shining with the light of the sun? Yeah, we can't see the sun, but the trees are shining with the light of the sun. If the light of the sun were removed from them, the trees would vanish, or our sight of the trees would vanish. So actually all we're seeing is the light, the reflected light of the sun. We call that trees, but all we're seeing is a play of light. Now take that one step further, but because all there is to the seeing of the play of light is the knowing of it. So the seeing is illuminated by knowing. This experience is being lit up, not by a physical light, but a knowing light. And when that becomes clear, just as it is obvious to us that the trees are shining with the light of the sun, it becomes clear to us that experience is shining with the light of knowing. That's what the Sufis mean when they say, wherever you look, there is God's face. It means the light of pure consciousness shining, not just in experience, but as experience. Because all there is to experience is the knowing of it. So now our experience is shining with the knowing of it. That's all we are experiencing now. Is anyone here experiencing anything other than the knowing of their experience? This knowing is not concealed behind experience, or although for one who is lost in experience, it is legitimate as a first step to say, be aware of the experience of being aware in the background of experience. But at this stage of the retreat, we're beyond that now. We are seeing that experience is shining with the knowing of it. It's not even that experience shines with the knowing of it, in the same way that the trees shine with sunlight, because there is a difference between the trees and the sunlight. Not only is experience shining with the knowing of it, illuminated by the knowing of it, it is made of the knowing of it. And this is easy to test in our experience. Are any of you now experiencing any other substance apart from knowing? It's actually our experience. It only appears to be something other than pure knowing, that is a multiplicity and diversity of objects made out of stuff called matter, from the perspective of a separate subject of experience. So it seems to be made out of matter from the perspective of a finite mind. The dreamed world seems to be made out of matter from the point of view of the character in the world. But from the point of view of the dreamer's mind, it's all a manifestation of its own infinite, relatively speaking, and indivisible mind. So all of this is a manifestation of infinite, indivisible consciousness. In other words, there are no real separate objects or people anywhere in existence. We are all the activity of God's mind, the activity of infinite consciousness. And when we feel love, what we are feeling is our shared reality. When we feel the quality of love in our friendships here during the week, we are feeling, not just understanding, we are feeling the shared reality, our shared reality, behind the differences of our thoughts, feelings and bodies, and etc. And when we experience beauty, we are having exactly the same experience. We are experiencing the reality we share with the world rather than with a person. When we feel that shared reality with a person or an animal, we call it love. When we feel that shared reality with the world, we call it beauty.
Beautiful. Thank you. May we all be steeped in that realization.
Indeed. Sorry.
What you call lucid waking.
Yes.
Can you speak of when it turns back around?
Well, lucid waking is when awareness has turned away from itself. Awareness is not focused, so to speak, on itself. Awareness is not just being aware of itself. It has turned round, metaphorically speaking, and it is being aware of its activity. So you use the analogy of the aware screen, the infinite TV screen, the vast TV screen that is aware. It is watching the movie that is playing on it. So the screen is not just looking at itself, the screen. The screen is now watching the movie that is its own activity.
Yes, and it knows
But it's doing that without forgetting itself. For most people, there are two states: either being aware of themselves, and that requires a turning away from the objects of experience, or there is the being aware of the objects of experience, and that requires a turning away from themselves. So this is the condition when awareness falls asleep to itself. It becomes aware of the world. When it falls asleep to the world, it becomes aware of itself. It's another way of translating the Bhagavad Gita lines. So, and to begin with in our spiritual practice, we go back and forth. We withdraw the attention from the objects of experience. We go back and we become aware of the experience of being aware in the absence of objects. Then we turn round, we go back out to objects again, but we seem to overlook or ignore. This is what the word ignorance or avidya in the Vedantic tradition means, the ignoring of ourself. It doesn't mean stupidity, it just means the ignoring of ourselves. When we turn back out towards objects, we overlook ourselves, we turn around again, we come back to ourselves, but we have to turn away from objects to do that. So this is the early stages of our investigation. But then when we start to explore, as we have done these last few days, the tantric path, what we are doing there is turning back out towards objective experience, but not losing the knowledge of ourselves as awareness. Not only not losing the knowledge of ourselves as awareness, but seeing that actually awareness pervades the foreground. It's not just a presence in the background of experience, it is a presence in the background of experience, but it also infiltrates the foreground of experience.
Yes,
not only does it infiltrate the foreground of experience, it's all there is to the foreground.
Yeah.
So to begin with, the screen is behind the movie, then we realize it pervades the movie, then we realize it is the movie.
Yes,
Begin with, we discover awareness in the background of experience, then we feel that it pervades experience, and then we feel it is experience.
It seems there's a stage, if you will. I'm new to your vocabulary, but it seems that there's a stage of it recognizes, it never loses that. It knows that that's what this is. It's like a lucid waking. I'd not heard that before, but it's like being a participant, but you know that.
Yes.
So that turning around when it expresses in the world, when it this hasn't found an expression, so it's everything is very quiet, very peaceful. There isn't doesn't seem to be an expression.
Just to take one step back, in this transition from the objects of the world obscuring awareness to understanding and feeling that the objects of the world shine with awareness. This is two different ways of seeing the world. In the first instant, the world conceals awareness. In the second instant, it reveals awareness, or it shines with awareness. And awareness has these two possibilities within it: to conceal itself with its own activity. It doesn't. This is not a mistake. It doesn't. Awareness is not subject to ignorance. It freely assumes the form of experience and loses itself in it for the sake of creativity. That is its means of creation. But then it then has the capacity to go back to itself and then go out again into experience, and experience is then felt as a revealing power. It is felt to shine with consciousness rather than to veil consciousness. So these are two modes that awareness or consciousness has. Sorry, now to come back to your question, that you feel in yourself that this knowledge of yourself is not yet expressed in your outside life. Is that right? Is that?
Yes, life is very, very, very quiet.
Yes.
Just
well, that's beautiful. I
quiet,
suspect that this quietness is more expressed than you realize. If I were to ask your friends, sorry, what is your name?
Mimi.
Mimi. If I were to ask your friends, how do you find Mimi? I think it's unlikely that they would say, well, she's just a kind of blank, unexpressed screen. I suspect that she'd say she's peaceful, she's kind, she's loving, she's quiet. These are the qualities of yourself. They may not be in you, they may not manifest themselves in an explosion of creativity or action, or in other people they do. Other people go out into the world like a warrior, take this out into the life, and it's not enough just to teach meditation in one school. They want to teach meditation in 10 schools. And it's not enough to teach meditation in 10 schools. They want to teach meditation in 100 schools. And that's a powerful expression of this understanding. But in someone else, it may be very quiet. And I suspect in you this presence is shining more brightly from the outside. And I don't suspect it. I can see that it is more than you realize.
Is awareness all that you're doing?
Is awareness all that I'm doing?
Like, is that
What do
all,
you
like,
mean?
is that your experience all the time?
It's my experience that all there is knowing.
Okay.
It's also your experience that all there is knowing.
Yeah.
But sometimes, in order to manifest, this knowing has to divide itself into two parts, a knower and a known. So each of us are apparent knowers of the known, apparently finite minds or separate selves from whose point of view the known seems to be known. So we have to somehow go beyond this point of view. From the point of view of the separate subject of experience, there are separate objects of experience. The separate subject of experience looks inside herself. She finds thoughts and feelings, and she calls that mind. She looks outside of herself. She sees objects and others. She calls that matter. So this division of mind and matter is inherent in the subject-object relationship. So from the point of view of the subject, it sometimes seems that there is more, there's something other than just mind or consciousness present. That is matter, stuff that is outside consciousness. And the appearance of this stuff apparently outside consciousness, called matter, is what veils, for many people, the fact that all there is in experience is knowing. Just like from the point of view of the character in the dream, it seems that the dreamed world is made out of matter. That belief veils the reality of the dreamed world, which is an expression of the dreamer's mind. But so the dreamer, the dreamed character, has to trace her experience back deeply into herself until she arrives at the reality of her experience, which is the dreamer's mind. That's what I call, in this analogy, pure knowing. So I see my experience just like you do. What I'm seeing now is seen from the point of view of this body. So it appears that whatever it is that knows or is aware of my experience is located just here, just behind my eyes, and that seems to be confirmed by the fact that when I close my eyes, the world disappears. I open them again, the world reappears. So isn't it obvious that whatever it is that is seeing the world lives just behind my eyes in something called the brain? That's the materialist answer. But strangely, the character in the dream, from whose perspective the dream world is known, feels exactly the same thing. When you close your eyes in the dream world disappears. When you open your eyes in the dream world reappears. So the character in the dream, from whose point of view the dreamed world is known, believes and feels that whatever it is that knows the dreamed world lives just behind her eyes in something called a brain. But then you wake up and you realize, no, the knowing with which the dreamed character knew her experience was not located in her body or in her brain. In fact, it was to be found nowhere in her world. Her world and her body and her brain appeared in it, the dreamer's mind. The entire dream is an activity of the dreamer's mind. All of this is the activity of consciousness, which appears as a multiplicity and diversity of objects only from the perspective of a separate subject of experience.
So when you know and you look back out,
yes,
you feel like, is it qualitylessness that you're experiencing, or or you just feel?
You still see apparent objects
Right,
and others.
like I see Michael.
I'm just seeing a regular world like you are, just regular objects and others. But remember Huang Po. People ignore the reality of the illusory world. I see the illusory world in exactly the same way as you did. So did the Buddha, so did Ramana Maharshi. We all see the same or a similar illusory world. That doesn't mean that the world doesn't exist. It means it's when Huang Po refers to the illusory world, he's not saying the world is not there. He's saying it is there, but it's not what it appears to be. An illusion is not something that doesn't exist, like a square circle. It is something that is present, but it is not what it appears to be. What is it really? That's what Huang Po calls its reality. What is really there? People ignore the reality of the illusory world. So you and I, and everybody, sees the same world. Some of us believe that it is the way it appears to be. That is, a multiplicity and diversity of objects and selves made out of dead inert stuff called matter. Some people believe that. That is, in fact, the materialist assumption that is the foundation of our world culture. And other people who make this deep investigation into the world see through its illusion to its reality. Now, I don't mean by that its reality is somehow behind this world. No, when you see through the landscape in the movie to the screen is not behind the landscape and something other than the landscape. It is the landscape. This is what we're experiencing now. This is reality. The reality of the world is not behind the world. It is shining as the world, but it appears as a multiplicity and diversity of objects, and thus that reality veils itself with its own activity. Just as if we stretch the metaphor, we could say that the screen veils itself by assuming the form of the landscape. When we're seeing the landscape, we are in fact seeing the screen. But if we believe it is a real landscape, we will seem not to see the screen. So infinite consciousness has veiled itself by assuming the form of this appearance. If we believe that the appearances, the multiplicity and diversity of objects and selves made out of dead inert stuff called matter, is real, then that will seem to veil its reality. And then we think, we have to go in search of the reality. Reality must be beyond the world. It's not beyond the world. The reality, this is reality. It is shining as the world, but we have to, as it were, make a deep exploration of it and penetrate through the appearance. This beautiful hymn that we used to sing, another of these hymns that we used to sing at boarding school by George Herbert. Teach me, my God and King, in all things thee to see, and what I do in anything, to do it as for thee. A man may look on glass, and on it stay his eye, or if he pleaseth, through it pass, and then may heaven espy. It's exactly the same understanding. Teach me, my God and King, in all things thee to see, not to find God behind things, removed from things, separate from things, in another realm. Teach me, my God and King, in all things thee to see the ultimate reality in and as all things, in and as this experience of the world.
When I was during one of these experiences, just removing everything, and then love was there, and I tried to remove love, and I couldn't.
You can't. No, exactly. Yes, whatever you cannot remove from yourself is essential to yourself.
So feeling that overflowing, when we meet in the world, or do or act in the world, that's just it. It's just to love or to be, or does that knowing, and when people come, is it helpful when you're with them?
Yes, absolutely. When you're with someone, before how they appear, or what they say, or what they do tells you anything about them, feel first that they are this same inherently peaceful, unconditionally fulfilled, loving presence. Before they say anything, before you've made a judgment about their appearance, before they've done anything, then you register the appearance, the words, the actions, and this all communicates something to you. But whatever it communicates to you, don't let that veil the reality of the person behind this expression, even if their expression is out of line with who they truly are, because they don't yet know who they truly are. Allow your response to their expression to be informed by your knowledge of their true nature. Teach me, my God and King, in all things thee to see, and what I do in anything, to do it as for thee. A man may look on glass, and on it stay his eye, or if he pleaseth, through it pass, and then may heaven espy.